Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada,
Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Gurudev, Gurudev, Gurudev. Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Should I put it this way?
I don't know.
If I can put it on this side.
Well,
Hare
we
Krishna, hello and a warm welcome to everyone this afternoon. Really great to attend this wonderful event and program that we have planned. So this afternoon we have a very, very special guest in our midst. I'm just going to quickly share with you the program lineup going forward. So the program will be a talk by His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami Maharaj. Maharaj is originally from Auckland, New Zealand. He's been practicing Bhakti Yoga for almost 50 years. I think this coming January will be exactly 50 years. Thank you, Maharaj, for that exact precise date. So January the 7th will be exactly 50 years that Maharaj has been practicing the process of Bhakti Yoga. Maharaj is he's a member and one of the leaders of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So we're very, very fortunate that he's come here today to enlighten us and to guide us. Maharaj is going to give a talk for about 45 to 50 minutes. Thereafter, we're going to have a Q&A session. We're going to have a Q&A session, so there's going to be a notepad and pen going around. So questions to ask Maharaj, please feel free. And then we're going to have didactic kirtan meditation by Maharaj itself. So at any point, if you have the urge to stand up and dance, the space. So thank you all very much again for coming, and without ado, I'll hand you over to Maharaj, and we can welcome him by just putting our hands together. Warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I guess you can hear me okay at the back? Well, yeah, thank you very much, Dineshwar Krishna, for the warm welcome. And it's very nice to be here with you. As he said, I'm born and raised in New Zealand, but that was a long time ago. I've been for the first 21 years of my life, and then I lived in England, sort of around the UK more or less, for 7 or 8 years. And then I came here in January 1980. I came to South Africa, and I've been based here since. So I'm sort of, I don't know, multinational or international or something. And I have 2 passports, New Zealand passport and South African. And I remember once, long time ago actually, I was flying from probably England, but somewhere in Europe, down Joburg, and the Springboks on the plane, the same plane as me. And I got onto the plane and I was walking through, and I had my New Zealand passport. And some of them made some comments, you know, the All Blacks. And that's, I think, to some degree. Yes, I've been based down here. I mean, living, but I was, before COVID, I was traveling a lot. To travel to, would you believe, Russia a lot. Our organization, we have a lot of people in Russia. Of course, nowadays anything to do with Russia is a bit uncool, I think, for good reason. Anyway, my first language is English and my second language is Russian. So if any of you can speak Russian, discussion, what do I do? Got it. Right, okay. So I was informed that we should say something a little while, half an hour, 40 minutes maybe. So I was asked to say something about, I mean, it's a very sort of general subject. What is it? Eternal happiness.
Attaining everlasting happiness.
Attaining everlasting happiness. Gosh, that's a pretty broad subject. So anyway, let's have a look at the subject, and then as you heard, in a while, we'll have time for questions and answers. And I think we're going to hand out or pass around maybe a pad and and a pen, something like that, some paper at least, and a pen. And if anyone's got any questions on the subject of, well, attaining eternal happiness or spiritual life in general, then we can have a look at them. For the time being, though, what I will do is I will read a verse from it's like the foundational text as far as the subject of bhakti yoga is concerned, because my sort of background in that sense is bhakti yoga. You've all heard this term yoga, of course. It's so well known that, generally speaking, what people are most familiar with is called hatha yoga, which basically means, well, physical exercises, essentially. And it can include breathing exercises also, which are physical exercises. This word yoga is a Sanskrit term. Sanskrit is very ancient language from Southeast Asia, particularly India, but actually all over Asia. So yoga means, the dictionary meaning of the word yoga is to link with God. Yeah, if you look it up in the dictionary, you'll see, even in the most broad sense, yoga to link, but meditation is used in the spiritual context to link with God. And there are different forms of yoga, which means that there are different ways to link with God. So, even in that sense, any process of religion, not necessarily just religion, but any spiritually oriented type of process is a form of yoga. So even of yoga, really, the followers of that, they might not agree, or they just might not even like the idea, but that's actually the fact. Similarly, Christianity, Judaism, it's a form of yoga. It's a way of linking with God. So, but like I said, there are different form or different ways of linking with God. And the hatha yoga, the physical exercise, I'm sure you've seen the yogis sitting down cross-legged like this sort of thing. Generally, that's to do with hatha yoga. And hatha, the idea of hatha yoga is yoga to link with God through different physical, like not just exercises, but discipline. Then another form of yoga is dhyana yoga with a D, dhyana. Dhyana means to focus the mind. In other words, we're linking with God through the mind, or by utilizing the mind, focusing the mind on God. Another form of yoga that was dhyana with a D. Another form is jnana with a G, jnana. Jnana means knowledge. So it's more like, you could say, it's more like a philosophical approach, trying to understand. life with the supreme in the center. So it's more intellectual, not just the mind. We distinguish the mind from the intelligence. You know, the mind, we've all got minds, and I imagine you've had experience. Sometimes the mind sort of has a mind of its own. It sort of goes off here or there. And sometimes the mind gets into some pattern of thought and we don't like it. And we try to stop thinking about it. But sometimes we can't. Yeah. I can tell you a funny experience I had. It was actually, it was in the there was a group of us, we were down in Cape Town, and during the Christmas period, sort of late November through December into early January, we were doing some fundraising in, if you're familiar with Cape Town, in the Golden Acre. It's a shopping mall right in the center pretty much of the downtown area. And so they gave us a spot. We had it all arranged. We had a spot where we had our tables and things. And we're there for like 6 weeks or 7 weeks. We had our spot, but one day they had to move us for some reason. So they put us next to the music shop selling CDs and maybe, I don't know, in those days, records. So they put us next to that. And there we were from like 9 till 5 or so. Good several hours. And for some reason, truly unknown to me, the entire day, my dear friends, the actual entire day, they played one song. One song. The whole day. It was just a loop for the entire day. That song was, if you're familiar with Stevie Wonder, and, you know, don't mind me saying it, but I was never really a Stevie Wonder fan. But anyway, they played the whole day. One song. I just called to say. You familiar with that? Okay. You know, I mean, it's okay. It's okay. So we just heard it and heard it. You know, if it's a 3-minute song, kind of typically, so we heard it 20 times an hour for 8 hours, 160 times. I knew it off by heart. But when we were going back to where we were staying, we took the train down to Rondebosch, and we're sitting in the train, and I was doing a little meditation actually in the train. And so I'm sitting there, and suddenly into my mind comes, I just called to say, I love you. And I thought, no, wait a minute, don't get into that. So I'd stop myself and try and focus again. And a couple of minutes later, I just called to say. It was like a running battle between me and Stevie Wonder. But that's the mind. The mind doesn't exactly have intelligence. The intelligence has the intelligence, but the mind is just picking up impressions. Like that impression was the song, or sometimes your mind picks up impressions, something you've seen, some person you've seen, or just some sight you've seen, or the mind. You know, if you're into politics, our friend Julius, you know who I mean, don't you? Anyway, Julius may say something pretty drastic, and it really strikes you. What is he talking about? And you can't get it out of your head. And for quite some time you're thinking, what is this guy doing? So like this, the mind kind of has a mind of its own. But the intelligence means our ability to focus and evaluate and understand, of course, and even, you know, in a nice sense, to discriminate. Yeah, between what will help us in our lives and what won't help us. That's discrimination in a constructive sense. So that's the intelligence. But the mind doesn't, in and of itself, doesn't have intelligence. So whatever's going on around, the mind just gets caught up with it. And sometimes if bad things are going on around, you know, like really bad things, then people get into depression. Depressed. And bad things, and the mind has focused on it, and they can't break the mind away from it. So yeah, then people become depressed or disturbed in some way or another, paranoid maybe, thinking that, you know, everyone's watching me, everyone's watching me. Yeah. I just read the other day, well, a little while ago, you really care how you look. Are you cool? Are you okay? Or things out a bit. What do people... When you're 40, you don't worry about it so much. And when you get to 60, you really don't worry, because you know they're all thinking of themselves anyway, so you don't need to worry about what they're thinking of. Okay. So yeah, so yoga, hatha yoga, more physical. Dhyana, more with the mind, focusing the mind, and jnana, with the intelligence, trying to understand God and life in relation to God. And there are others. There are other forms of yoga. There's one type of yoga, it is called Shat Chakra Yoga. And it involves trying to lift your life is from different points in your body up to the top of the head. Those points are called chakras. I don't know, what would you say, sort of like pressure points, or particularly sensitive points in our internal functionings. So, and there's 6 of them. Shat means 6 in Sanskrit. So trying to lift the life airs up to the top of the head. Yeah, it's not a simple subject, actually, when you really get into it. But anyway, what I'm going to do right now, and bearing in mind the subject, attaining eternal happiness, I'm going to read a verse from Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is ancient literature. They say it was written down 5,000 years ago. Before that, it was passed by word of mouth. So, right, actually, before I read the verse, I'll read the verse, but before I do, let me just recite a couple of mantras, a few mantras. If you know them with me, if you don't, just listen. Just try and give your attention. So here we go. Namaha Vishnu Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Maniti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Chadesha Tarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha. Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Vaishnava means people who, basically people who are trying to approach God, you could say. And Namo, Namaha, means I offer my respects. To those, whoever they are, and in whatever way, to those who are trying to approach God. In our Bhakti Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, I didn't mention Bhakti Yoga, did I? Bhakti Yoga means to link with God through Bhakti. Bhakti means devotion. Devotion, not just in an emotional sense, but ultimately in the sense of love. And when we say love, we don't mean in the sort of the pop song version of love. When I was young, I don't know if I'm the oldest person here, but pretty close to it, if not. The days of the Beatles. She loves you, yeah. With a love like that, what is it? You should be glad. Right? But, more often than not, or at least often, what they call love, it's really not exactly love, but it's more like love. You look good to me. As fate would have it, I look good to you. Let's get together and sort of grab hold of each other, and there we go. But it's just, lust at least specifically is very selfishly based. What's good for me? What will make me feel good? Whereas love, at least in our tradition of Bhakti Yoga, love means that one tries to please the beloved. So it's not just emotional, although it is also emotional, but it's not just emotional. But really having a desire to please that one who you have your relationship with, and not just wanting to be pleased by them. Okay, so now I'm going to read a verse from Bhagavad Gita. It's from the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is titled The Most Confidential Knowledge. And it's verse Rajavidya Rajaguyam. Well, this is the Sanskrit verse. Rajavidya Rajaguyam avitram idam uttamam pratyakshavagaman dharmyam sukam kartum avyayam. And this knowledge is the king of education, secret of all secrets. It's the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully perfect. You know, I just thought of that verse because of the last little phrase, it is joyfully performed, and, you know, attaining eternal happiness. Yeah. So, let me read it again. It's really, I mean, it's something we got to think about and consider. Knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It's the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. So that's deep. That's really deep. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a number of points which are made in the verse, different places in the verse. But I want to just look at, just briefly to start, it's right in the middle that this knowledge, it is, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it's the perfect religion. So, you know, this is a very important point. The self, what are we talking about when we talk about the self? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk about the self, and it's in spiritual circles particularly, but what is the self? Well, at least I can say from the perspective of Bhakti Yoga, the self is who we are. Who we are. In essence, the most essential form or state or condition. And speaking, well, sometimes in English, sometimes the word soul is used. Soul and self, we would say, speaking, they're like just they're synonyms. Yeah. It means who we actually are. Now, sometimes we call people up, right up here in front of us when we're discussing the subject, and we ask them, call you up? Yes. You look intelligent. What work do you do?
I'm an analyst.
A logistics analyst. Wow. I don't even know what. Must be pretty sharp. Just, anyway, okay, stay there, but turn around, face our friends. This, by the way, is Yogendra. We're old friends, so he won't mind if I embarrass him a little in front of you all. So, okay, Yogendra, point to your... That's good, okay. Point to your left arm. That's pretty good. Point to your right leg. He is sharp, isn't he? He's getting it. Point to your head. Okay. Now sort of indicate your whole body. Yeah, basically. Okay, now here we go. Are you ready, everyone? Seat belts. Now, point to yourself. We started off there. Point to yourself, please. That's your chest. Come on. Wakey. Try indicating your whole body. No, that's your whole body. We already said that. What'd she say?
Saying the self is the soul. How do you point to the soul?
Well, as you can point to it. He is good. You can sit down again. So you see, of course, he knows. He knows because he's been around Bhakti Yoga for quite a while. But you get the average person off the street or in the audience and you drag them out in front of, particularly if there's 50 or 100 people or 1,000 people, and you ask them to do this, then you get to that point of point to yourself, and they start going. Really. I mean, I've done it many times, I can tell you. Really, a lot of times. And it's very revealing, actually. It's very revealing that people don't know who is their self, who they are. Because if you say, well, it's the whole body, but that we said, that's your body. Or, in your head, of course, generally the mind is going on inside our heads. So, if you point to your head, and then we say, no, that's your head, it's not yourself. So the thing is this, I'm not going to sort of belabor the point too much, but let's just, let it register that generally people don't know where the self is, or what is the self. Obviously we all know our bodies, we know our minds, our personalities, but our bodies, if you say, well, I am a man, I'm a male, I'm a sort of elderly white man, that's who I am. But when I was at school, I was a little white boy. At least my body was. Now it's the body of a big white man. So which was me? Which was me? And even we talk about, don't we? My body, my head, my leg, my chest, my body, my mind, it's all mine. So, okay, if it's all yours, then where are you? If these things are all yours, and it's not just sort of playing a word game. It may sound like that, but it's not just that. It's a real encounter with reality, actually, if you consider carefully. Yeah. So, and the mind. We were children, and we had children's minds. And we were fond of little toys and little dolls, or I remember when I was small, I had a little teddy bear. Maybe I shouldn't tell you that, revealing too much. But I had a little teddy bear, and I would take him to bed at night. His name was Johnny. Seriously. Dolls, you know, they have dolls, Barbie dolls, and so on. Yeah. So when we were young, we had children's minds, and now we're adults, our minds are quite different. Really, they're very different from when we were little children. That, you know, if you're female, you may have had little dolls in your early days. After a while, instead of having a doll, you had a child. Yeah. You had a child. And when you got a child, the doll will not do. Take away the child, take a doll instead. No, will not do. But when you're a little girl, oh, the doll's very special. You get the idea. So the body changes and the mind changes. So therefore, in that sense, like our personalities change. You go to university and you study to be, what was it, a logistics analyst. So now if people ask you, you know, what do you do? Then typically you would say, as you said to me, I am a logistics analyst. But after a while you may get a better offer, like a much better offer from, and they may want you to become, I don't know, a sales marketing person, or, you know, I mean, people change occupations. So then people ask you, what do you do? Oh, I am a marketing analyst. But I am. It's all I am. I am. Even once when I was in London, I was living in central London for a while, and right outside of the place, right by the main street, two drivers had a collision or something. They had their vehicles straight. And I remember so vividly, one of the drivers got out and he's screaming at the other guy, "You hit me!" I mean, several times he said, "You hit me!" But you did not hit me. Your car hit my car. The thing is, we have this tendency to misidentify with things which are not me, but they're mine. So who am I, actually? According to the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga, of Bhagavad Gita, and you know, if you really get into it, you'll see in Christianity, in Islam, and maybe not so much Buddhism, they have kind of different perspectives, but in a lot of these cases, the soul or the really prominent. Is it raining?
Not yet.
I'm okay. So yeah, like in the Bible somewhere, don't ask me where exactly, there's a statement, is the prophet. What is the profit? If you gain the whole world, but lose your eternal soul. That? You heard that one before? Yeah, oh gosh, I went to an Anglican school for 12 years. We were heavily indoctrinated. What is the profit if you gain the whole world, eternal soul? So in Bhakti Yoga, the idea is we're all eternal souls. Oh, I think it's raining. Oh dear, I'm going to be here on my own. Come and join me. What should we do? Oh, okay, that's a good idea.
Okay. Business analyst.
He's a business analyst, logistics analyst. What? Anyway, okay. In under the shelter. Let's do it. Grab your chair. Please stop raining as soon as we get under there, but anyway. Oh, look, what about this?
You could just put it in your pocket if you don't. Are you going to carry them?
Wow. Just, be very careful of that. I mean, we don't want to get it wet at all. Put your chadar over it.
Yes, we had a reasonable run considering the forecast.
Sure.
Look at the positive.
Inside.
Maraj, maybe you could sit. Is that okay? Or?
Here?
Yes.
This one?
Get the chair there.
Let's put a chair.
Okay.
I can put this chair, Kashi. Just move this.
I tell you, just put it over there. Yeah, that's it. You got it.
And now it's done.
No, we're okay. Thank you.
Just take out the extra chairs.
Boy.
Okay, I've got also I can't go for all the days so much.
Yeah, quick. Yeah. Okay.
Link these two.
Maharaj,
Shoot.
the rain stopped.
Anyway, I'm here. I'm staying here. Huh? Oh, Northcliff. Okay. So anyway, here we are. Okay. So I was talking, let me just, I'll do maybe another 10 minutes or something. And then someone was meant to have, you've got the thing for the questions. Anyone's got questions, comments? Yeah, I mean, just go for it. And then pass it on. Yeah, sure. If you got no question, just pass it on. So, okay, the self. We were talking about the self. And that verse was saying that this knowledge, particularly that knowledge, the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, the most confidential knowledge, that chapter's called. It's the king of education, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, means not just theoretically, but realization like that, like through experience. It's the perfection of religion. So we are the eternal conscious living being, the eternal soul. And while we're living within the body, then the body is alive is alive, displaying symptoms of life. And when the soul, the self, leaves the body, that's it, that's the end of the body. Kind of a little, in a certain sense, you could say, I mean, to some degree you can, a watch. Most watches nowadays are battery powered. So when you remove the battery, it just stops. And that's it. And you can do what you like. You can hit it or speak to it nicely or something like that, but it's not going to go, because the source of its life, or however you would put it, its vitality, has been removed. So that it's not a bad example, the battery in a watch or in some sort of device which empowers it. And so the soul, the self, is conscious. The self is eternal and does not die when the body dies. At least this is Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Yoga. Yeah. But now we have our current bodies, and according to Bhagavad Gita, when we eventually die, or when the soul or the self leaves the body, then that eternal conscious self goes to another body, depending on the state of mind you've developed in the course of your life. You go to another body which just fits in with that. So then you're born in that body and you feel at home. Yeah. So, and the soul by nature, conscious, eternal, and blissful, full of bliss, full of happiness, by nature, not just like acquired happiness, like some people think, some unfortunate people really think happiness, you can find happiness at the bottom of a bottle, right? At the bottom of a bottle of mainstay. There it is. There's happiness. Anyway, but it's not real. It's not, it's real, but it really lacks substance, and it really lacks value, and it's temporary. It's temporary. When I was young, my first job, I wanted to be a writer, so I became a journalist in Auckland, New Zealand. I was working on one of the big daily newspapers, and one day, would you believe, the beer, as in drinking, the beer tanker drivers went on strike. Can you imagine? crisis. But anyway, that's what happened. They went on strike, and they stayed on strike for weeks. And so all the pubs and etc., they all ran out of beer completely. Then they all ran out of whiskey and gin and all the other things, and then there was no liquor available at all. And I remember there in the newspaper that our police reporter, he came in one day and said, yeah, I was just with the head of the police, and he told me that since they've run out of liquor, the crime level has dropped by 90%. Yeah. Really? Seriously? Interesting, isn't it? I mean, there are many interesting things around. But the pleasure that people get out of that, they get some pleasure, it's a fact. But, they also get a lot of problems too. But whatever pleasure they get is temporary. But the soul, the self, is eternally in a state of happiness. That's just what it is. You could almost say it is made of. It's made of. Sometimes it's said the soul is consciousness. Or you can say the soul has consciousness. And these bodies, if you evaluate these bodies, they're just, they're blood and bones and things, tissue. But you can analyze these bodies in chemical terms. And when I was in England, I read in one of the newspapers that some scientist had calculated how much, like sulfuric acid and sodium chloride and all these different things were in a typical body of a typical adult. Because you can buy these chemicals in the chemical shops. And he said, yeah, the value of our bodies on a chemical level at that time, he said, it's about 10 pounds. About 10 pounds. Not very substantial. And, when I was young and at school, we were taught these bodies, I think it was 70% water. Is it something like that?
Correct.
Something along those lines. I don't know in South Africa if it's more or less or anything. But yeah, something like that. And then you got these other constituents which make up this body. And so if we say 70% water, but you never get any water which is conscious and which can think and, act constructively. And like that, our bones are mainly calcium. And it's the same point. So where is that consciousness, that life actually coming from? It's not coming from the actual body itself, but it's coming from the living soul, the living self. So therefore, for attaining eternal happiness, first of all, we can't do it in these bodies anyway by definition because they're temporary. I'm 71.
Wow.
I'm sorry. But it's true.
That's amazing.
Is it really?
Yes.
Oh.
Fertility rate is extremely high.
71.
That's amazing.
It's not really. It's pretty ordinary. Okay. Well, my mother lived to be 91.
Wow.
Or 92. But I remember, I've been doing this about 50 years since I was 21. And I remember I'd be sitting in front of an audience like this, and sometimes I would be the youngest person. And now here I am, and often I'm the oldest person than usual. So, attaining eternal happiness, we're not going to do it in these bodies. We're not going to do it in these bodies. Even though we get some happiness. But if we want eternal happiness, we're not going to get it within these bodies, because they're just typical material things. Like even this house, it'll outlive us. It'll even outlive you, this house, you would expect. But still it's temporary. Even the planet is temporary, actually. To get the idea, this is a little hypothetical, subtle. It's not just sort of straight in your face. But consider this, that our bodies have changed. We were all young like you. You're 8 or 9 or 10?
I'm turning 9 this year.
Turning 9, okay. So we were all that age. Now we're, whatever age, adult ages. So our body has changed. The mind has changed, the personality. Even as you get older, your personality changes. Like from 50 to 70, your personality changes to some degree. Yeah. So we're in a state of flux. We're in a state of flux. But just consider this. Your body has changed dramatically. Your mind, your personality, dramatically. But still you are the same person. You're not a different, the entity, you as an entity in the fundamental sense. You are the same age, but you are the same person. This is giving just a little hint that beneath the body, beneath the mind, beneath the personality, whether we're male, female, old, young, big, small, and whether we're intelligent or not so intelligent or whatever in those terms. But there's an entity there. And that entity is subject to the body, to the mind and personality. It's just giving a of what is the self, the soul, living being. And if we were simply these bodies, and that's what we actually are, then of course for these bodies, death is natural. It's completely natural. The death rate, after all, is 100. There's never been anyone who's just gone on and on. Mind?
The Mayans.
Oh, the mind.
I mean, they just die. They sing.
Okay.
Am I incorrect?
No, you're doing good. Thank you. I'm glad, we got thoughtful people. That's great. So these principles are there in many of the societies, particularly the older societies, in one form or another. But what I'm saying is that this is just giving us a little hint that seeing, generally speaking, death is, you don't know if you're going to be happy, you don't know if you're going to be safe. If you're going to be rich, you don't know if you're going to be poor, you don't know if you're going to be married or not. or if you are married, the marriage will last. You don't therefore know. But you do know, or you better know, you are going to die. It's a reality. But when faced with people like, yeah, okay, I'm going to die. Sure, yeah. I was a Dylan Thomas, actually. Dylan Thomas. You heard of Dylan Thomas? It's where Bob Dylan got his name from. His name is Bob Zimmerman. Didn't you know that? Bob Dylan, yeah, it's Bob Zimmerman. But he adopted the name because he was also a Dylan Thomas fan. So Dylan Thomas said, what is it? The force that through the green fuse drives the flower drives me. Yeah, the sort of singularity of life. And do not go gentle, talking about death, do not go gentle into that good night. Rage. Right. Dylan Thomas, yeah. Rage. And having seen a few people die, yeah, you know, it's tough. It's very, very tough. I was in Belfast when the sort of, you could say, civil war was at its peak in the 70s. And suddenly a bomb went off. Yeah, I mean, bombs would go off at least once a week or a couple of times a week. So we're out in the main street, bomb went off, everything stopped. And one woman who I happened to be talking to, she just went into a state of shock. And maybe I shouldn't even say this, she urinated on the spot while standing there. Yeah, because it's just, death is upon me, sort of thing. But so for us, for the self, death is foreign. And therefore people object. They resist. They don't just say, like, yeah, oh, I got to sleep. Oh, okay, I'm going to sleep. They don't just say, oh, I got to die. Okay, I'll die. And then off you go. So the self is something else on a higher level. So therefore, that's Krishna speaking actually in Bhagavad Gita, that this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets, and because it gives direct perception of the self, direct perception of the self by realization, therefore it's the perfection of religion, and it's everlasting and joyfully performed. Yeah, so there's some food for thought for you all. If we want to attain a higher level of happiness and even eternal happiness, we should try to come to the level of the self, the spiritual level, and tune into that. Tune into that. Get involved in spiritual activity. Like, I think in a few minutes. Did you get any questions?
Yes, it's 5 questions.
Oh, okay. I see. All right. No, you're doing fine. That's great. Just don't worry about it. Yeah, then what we'll do, we will chant, as we were doing at the beginning, for those of you who are here at the beginning. We'll do some mantra meditation for 5-10 minutes, singing mantra meditation. And it's spiritual sound vibration. And because it's spiritual, of the nature of the soul, it exhibits the qualities of the soul, the self, one of which is eternity. So if one sings, speaks, repeats, whatever, spiritual sound vibration, you can go on. Ultimately, if your mind doesn't get in the way, you can go on literally indefinitely. And, I can tell you, I've been doing that mantra meditation, particularly the Hare Krishna mantra. It's called Maha Mantra. Maha means great, the great mantra. There's so many mantras, it's the great mantra. So I've been chanting that now for 50 years as of January the 7th, coming up. And every day, and for a couple of hours a day, usually even 2 to 3. And I can tell you that, and it's not just me saying this, but I know so many, thousands of people actually, who are also doing this. And so I've been doing it every day for years, for the 50 years. But it has not become, boring or, like, can't we chant another mantra? Do we have to always chant this one? I mean, we do chant many mantras, but particularly that one. But because it's actually spiritual, it has that nature of eternity. So one is able to sing it, chant it, speak it, repeat it like that, basically on and on. And it doesn't become boring or, like I said, when I was young, I was a Beatles fan, the Rolling Stones, etc. The first record I bought was Chubby Checker, Let's Twist Again, like we did last summer. It was before the Beatles. It was Elvis Presley time. So that the thing is, even those Beatles songs just so incredibly popular, it's just unbelievable. But after a while, people get sick of them. And I was actually, quite some years ago, it was actually the end of 79, so quite some years ago, I was with George Harrison. I'm sure you've heard of him, famous musician, who was involved in these things. He was very deeply involved, actually, very deeply. So we were having a discussion about these types of things. And he told me, and there was 2 of us and him there were 3 of us together. So he told me, when I started doing meditation, particularly chanting Hare Krishna, at first it was okay, but then I got into it. And he said, one time, John Lennon and I, we were, as I recall, on like a boat cruise in the Mediterranean. They had been to India. They'd learnt about these things to some degree. And then, so now they came back and they're on this boat cruise, and they just got the inspiration one morning when they woke up, hey, let's just sing Hare Krishna. Yeah, okay. So they picked up their guitars and went for it early in the morning. And breakfast time came. No, we're into this. And they just carried on. Then lunchtime came. You got to take lunch. No, we're into this. So they just carried on. And they didn't stop for 22 hours. Maybe they had some toilet breaks or something, but otherwise they didn't stop for 22 hours. And I said to George, what would it have been like if you sang one of your Beatles songs for 22 hours? Actually, I don't know how familiar you are with the Beatles and their songs. I actually said, What would it have been like if you sang, I want to hold your hand for 22 hours? Are you familiar with that? And a golden oldie. And George laughed and just sort of momentarily thought. And George said, well, I think it would have been a hard day's night. Anyway, I thought it was very good, actually. Because it's true. You just can't. I mean, you can, for a little while, then you got to take a break, then you can come back to it, and then you got to take a break. You can't just go on and on and on, the same ordinary song, even your favorite song, just endlessly, because it'll get too much, because it's not spiritual, it's material by nature. So it exhibits the qualities of matter. And one of the qualities of matter, anything material, is it's temporary. So the experience it gives is temporary. But here we're talking about attaining eternal happiness. We have to get onto that eternal level with the soul, the self. Okay, look, friends, we got 5 questions here. Let me just quickly go through them and then we'll carry on. How do we as humans understand when God speaks to us? Well, that's a good question. It's a very important question, because if God were to actually speak to you, I mean, that would really be quite something. But, there are people who think, I mean, without trying to be sort of cheap or trite about it, there are people who, they say, hear voices. And I think usually it's like a form of, insanity, something like that. I'm just saying usually, often, however often, but definitely sometimes. And I remember I was in London during the 70s and staying in a big place we have outside London. And one young fellow, sort of hippie type, came in and there was a lecture going on. He sat down and lecture came to an end. Everyone started going away. He went into one of the side rooms very quickly and came back with a rose and nothing else.
As in no clothes.
Exactly. You got it. And yeah, seriously, no kidding. I was there in person. And he said to us, he said, God told me he wanted me to give him a rose, as I am, just, yeah. And we all had to conclude he wasn't doing so well, because I don't think it was God. I think it was just his mind, or, maybe some disembodied entity. Yeah, something like that. So, but when God speaks to us, the thing is, to avoid, you could say controversy, but at least to avoid the possibility of really making a mistake, you should try to find some literature coming from him which is authoritative. Like Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking. Krishna is said to be God and taken to be God by millions of people over the thousands of years. So then you can take it, yeah, this is actually, God's opinion on different things. Otherwise, it's too, what's your qualification for God to speak to you? He's a big man. Just to get Cyril, our old friend, Cyril to speak to us. How many of you spoken to Cyril? None of us. I haven't either. And he's not nearly as big as God. So to get God to speak to you, boy, oh boy, you got to be doing pretty well. So yeah, some authoritative source of knowledge from God, then you can take it like that. That this is, now we're hearing what God feels, what he thinks we should do and not do and that sort of thing. So when our minds move to other things, how to control them and bring them closer to our meditation. Yeah, one thing I can say about meditation, and we're going to do, just give me another few minutes, and we'll do some, and I think you'll get some experience of what I'm talking about, is that if you just try to meditate in your mind, it's not so easy because the mind, like we said, it has a mind of its own. It just tends to go here or there. Whatever attracts it, whatever seems interesting, that, oh, look at that, or, oh, hear this, like this. So, yeah, so we need to be able to get hold of our minds so they don't just go here and there. So that even, when there are distracting things around us, but we can stay focused. Yeah. So, therefore, in the Bhakti Yoga tradition, what is recommended, particularly in the beginning, all time, but particularly in the beginning, is that the meditation should be done audibly, not just within the mind, but you should repeat the sound and hear the sound, and that will catch your attention better.
Is that okay?
Oh, it's wonderful. Okay. Thank you. Very considerate. Yeah, so therefore, particularly in the beginning, but at all times ultimately, for meditation, it really helps to meditate on sound vibration. And gradually you'll come to the point where you can control your mind enough that even if there's something, playing on the television, some show is on, I don't know what the latest show is these days on South African television. You would know, wouldn't you? What is it? The latest TV. And that's good. That's good. It's a good sign. Because usually it's pretty rubbishy. So you won't get distracted. At least it's much easier to not be distracted, because you're utilizing your hearing, and hearing is the strongest of the senses. Yeah. You can wake a person who's sleeping, not through the sense of sight because they're sleeping, not by touch unless you're right next to them, or smell or taste. But even if you're 20 meters away, if you make enough noise, you can wake a person up. Because the ear, the sense of hearing, is the strongest sense. In the process of creation, it's the first sense and sensory function created, sound, and the sense of hearing. Yeah, so do your meditation with audible sound vibration. How can I tolerate unwanted thoughts? I mean, you can try to just kick them out. Just tell your mind, just stop it. Stop thinking about this. And sometimes it'll work. But sometimes it won't work. If there's something really on your mind, you can't just tell your mind, stop thinking about it, because the mind has a mind of its own. It will just continue. So best is to do what I was just saying, meditation on sound vibration, spiritual sound vibration. That way you can capture your attention and the mind becomes so much easier to control. I mean, it's just really like another world. So here we go, 2 more. In spiritual life, we feel happiness in our practice, but sometimes we become depressed. How do we maintain the happiness in times of struggle? Yeah, well, the thing is, your mind generally will only become depressed when you let your mind get absorbed in thinking about something depressing. Yeah, because the mind is basically responsive. It just reacts to stimuli. Yeah. So, you can, through meditation, you can strengthen your mind. Not just at the time you're doing the meditation, but on an ongoing basis you can strengthen the mind. So the mind becomes easier to control, and even in the face of difficulty. In Bhagavad Gita, we read the verse from Bhagavad Gita, there's another verse says that the embodied soul within the course of the life of the body, from childhood to youth to old age. So the embodied soul is there through those stages of the body. And, as you get older, you don't feel distressed. Where did my childhood body go? Oh no. My teenage body, where did it go? Can I get it back? You just take it in your stride. In fact, you don't even really notice it. But then, it's Krishna speaking, and he says that then, after a while, the soul goes into another body at death. But the self-realized person, the sober person, is not bewildered by even that change, the change of body at death, which, as we were saying earlier, generally disturbs people a lot. So here we go, it's the last one. How soon after death does the soul enter the new body? Yeah, that's an interesting, it's a kind of esoteric point to some degree. But the general understanding is, it depends on how different the next body you're going to get is compared to the body you just left. If your next body is going to be just pretty much the same, then it'll be very quick. But if you're going to get a really different body, then you have to be prepared for it, trained. Yeah, then it may take some time till you get to the point when you enter that, what is actually quite a different body from what you had, that you can get into it and you feel, yeah, right, here I am. And not like, what am I doing in this body? Sometimes the soul gets born, not exactly in the wrong body, but, there's a sort of, sometimes, it's becoming more and more prominent. People changing their sex. We all know about that. Yeah, means they're not happy in the particular body they have. So they feel, they have more of a female nature or male nature, whatever. So, but otherwise, generally, there's a process of training. So people are put into a body and they feel at home. So there you go, everyone. Thank you for being very patient. You're a really patient group, actually. Congratulations. You didn't walk out. Sometimes we get people who walk out. So, okay, next thing. What's the next? Oh, there you are. Yeah.
So we'll have a 5 to 10 minute kirtan, mantra meditation. Here.
Okay. Okay.
Yeshiva will play the harmonium. Yamaraj will
Okay.
play Madanga.
Okay.
Yamaraj.
All right.
And then we'll have maybe if you could ask one question,
Oh.
and then one lucky person will receive a special book as a gift. And then we're going to have a sumptuous feast, everybody.
Wow.
That's the program.
Pretty cool. Okay. Okay, now, okay, friends, we will, should we stand up? What should we do?
I think so, if that's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Let's stand up.